now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
People talking. What are they talking about? This world's gone crazy, and I'm trying to find a way out. Nobody knows where we're going, or if we're going at all. Cares if we sin, if we have nowhere to fall. It's a singing symphony, playing as the ship goes down. It's a porcelain epiphany, breaking if it hits the ground. I gotta find a way out. So many questions answered without an answer to tell. Too many things on my mind for anything to go well. It's a singing symphony, playing as the ship goes down. It's a
Good morning, K-Man. How are you all? Thank you so much for tuning in this beautiful Tuesday morning. We are here for some tea, and OMG, the tea is piping hot today. Happy Tuesday. Welcome one and welcome all. We got a lot to talk about. I really love that song. It's called Find a Way Out. And boy, I tell you, sometimes I wonder as a country if we're going to be capable of finding a way out, because every day it seems like the mess that we're in uh, gets a little bit deeper and gets a little bit more interesting. So this program, folks, in case you missed it, is the cold hard truth, and we are here to give it to you like nobody else does. And we're not going to pretty it up, and we are not going to sit here and try not to hurt your feelings, because unfortunately that doesn't really work. I don't know if you guys got the memo, but we are in a world of trouble, and we need as much honesty and forthright as communication as possible. We wake up every day. We have people around us lying to us. We have our parents lying to us. We have our siblings lying to us. And God knows, we have the politicians oftentimes not telling us the cold hard truth. Sometimes they lie, and sometimes they just don't want to tell you what's going on. We got educators who are dealing with their children, and they don't want to tell you the cold hard truth, right? Because everybody is concerned about hurting someone else's feelings. Isn't that a hot mess? How did we get here? I don't even know how we got here. I guess we can talk about some of that this morning. But I want to know, how do we get out of here? Most importantly, as that song so rightfully says, how do we find a way out? Well, who's here to help me find a way out today? We've got Evelyn. Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leroy is here to help us hopefully find a way out of this mess. Louisa is here. Miss Morna and Barbara. Siobhan is definitely here and locked in. Marshall joining us all the way from North Carolina. He's like, I want to be part of the solution too. Cayman is my home. I love Cayman. Right? All of you that are tuned in from overseas, I get it. You want to know what's happening on this little rock? Well, apparently a lot. A lot goes on here. And for a long time, folks, we were just sweeping it under the proverbial rug. Someone was saying to me the other day that our rug here in Cayman is so big that, wow. They're like, how do you manage to deal with even some of the social issues that you do? And I say, well, one issue at a time, folks. And they manifest themselves in the most interesting way. So we're going to talk about what manifested itself yesterday. That was disturbing, for sure. But nonetheless, as I always say, you're right where you're supposed to be. We're supposed to be having this conversation because there might be one or two young people out there who are listening, or even more, who will understand and get the message that yes, they're teenagers, but now people are going to hold you in the real world accountable for your own actions, although you're not even an adult. And what that means is you need to be conscious and aware of how the decisions you make today will impact your future. Good morning, Louisa. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have two Louisas. We have Louisa Bodden and Louisa Anderson. We have Felicia joining us. Thank you, Felicia. Olivia's here. Anthony is locked in. He says, good morning, everybody. Maria is from Clay County, Florida. Maria, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate that. Florida is just a jump, hop, and a skip away, but guess what? Right now, it might as well be on another planet because so many of us can't get there, Wow. Stay safe in Florida, my dear Maria. Good morning to Jermaine. How are you? Thank you for tuning in, Mr. Walton. Sunshine. Jazara is here. Jazara is like, I'm not playing around. I'm here to participate in the conversation. And why not? Why not? Thank you. Thank you. Having a quick perusal of a few messages coming in on the WhatsApp chat. So just remember, folks, you're more than welcome to join the conversation here on the show. Or you can also WhatsApp us at 324-1612. Let me just scroll that across the screen for those of you who do not know how to reach us. I feel like I'm always telling you guys this, but let me tell you again. Where's my little scroller now? There we go. All right. So good morning to Mr. John. Edward is here. Thank you for tuning in, Juliet. Miss Ruby is also watching from Florida. Elizabeth, good morning. Vanessa is here. Miss Valdine says good morning. Miss Sandra and all the world, wishing you all a pleasant day. Good morning, Rose. Good morning, Maureen. Ramsey got it locked in on YouTube. Big shout out to the 40 plus people on our YouTube channel that are watching. Yes, happy Tuesday to Andine. Larry joining us from New York. Maureen says that Jesus is coming, my friend. Can't see. Well, he's been coming from the day he left. I gotta tell you the truth. Good morning, Miss Donna. Punctuous is here. Punctual as always. Beautiful Charm is joining us. Charm says trending. No picture, but still, don't worry. You don't see me, girl. Sometimes I'm still doing things behind the scenes, and that's why I got my trusty apple here. That's why you might not see me right away. Good morning to Miss Sue. Latasha is here. Diamond Princess Sapphire, how are you? Louis from Detroit, 43 degrees. Calm winds. And the tea is hot. Well, we might kick up the winds just a little bit this morning. Good morning to Miss Jackie. Hi, Benji. Shannon says, what an eye-opener to what goes on at John Gray. Wow. Now listen to me, folks. I am told by teachers who've been out of the system, and some of them have even, they were in the system, and some have even come out of the system. I am told by them that as parents, you guys are turning a blind eye to what's happening, and that you have been doing so for a very long time. Really? Okay. If that is really the case, does that mean that you should not be surprised by what is happening in our schools? Well, according to our sources, and you know we got it locked in, that is exactly what they're saying. That you should not be surprised, that you all kind of know what's going on, and you are continually turning a blind eye to all of it. I'm just like, what? Seriously? Apparently so. Let's talk about it. Parents, what accountability are you going to take for this situation? Everybody's blaming the kids And I was thinking about this all last night, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know who's to blame here. The kids? The parents? Who? Let's break it down. Karen, good morning. Anne-Marie, good morning. I tell you what we do know is that if your eyes were not open yesterday, then you really got a problem, because there's absolutely no reason why any of us should now be pretending that what is actually happening in our schools isn't happening in our schools. Maria joining us from Florida. Thank you so much. Let's break it down by starting with, how on earth did I get this information? Well, first of all, I got it early in the morning, and I sat there and thought about it all day long. Because honestly, the last thing that I want to do is to embarrass or mishandle something with children. And so I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I spoke to a few people, some parents, and I went back and forth in my mind and thought, how do I really handle this situation? Do I put it out there? Do I not put it out there? If I don't put it out there, what does that say about us as a people? You know, are we not ready to even have this discussion? Spoke to some parents, and they're like, Sandy, at the end of the day, the kids have put it out there. They had no concerns whatsoever about recording this video. And you guys saw it took a lot of time to record it. Putting the video in the public sphere on social media, on Instagram, and sharing it with other people. At some point, I had gotten it so many times during the day that I was kind of like, wow, the cat's already out of the bag. There's no way to undo this. There's no way to put this back in. Right? And so I think about the things that we hide in this community on a continual basis. And how far has that gotten us as a country? Not very far, unfortunately. So on this platform, the big thing that we try not to do is to hide anything. If I had $1 for every single time a parent says to me, thank you, or anybody says to me, thank you for informing us, we wouldn't know half of what's going on in this country if it wasn't for CMR. We'd be so in the dark. It makes me understand that the role that we play here in this community is an important one. These are not easy conversations, believe me, you. Do I want to be sitting here talking about what your children are doing when I have a daughter of my own, and no parent can speak to at 14, 12, 10, potentially, what their child is going to be doing? Now, I don't care what you want to say in this moment. There's only so much control that you have over your children. And that is a reality that has to sink in. Right? So I can't help but wonder how many of us are a little bit too comfortable with hiding things. Is it time that we as a country really just rip off the Band-Aid? No more pretending, folks. Janolia doesn't even know what video we're talking about. Oh my gosh, do I have to actually show this video? Has everybody seen the video, first of all? Because I don't want you guys having this conversation in a vacuum, because if you don't know what I'm talking about, then of course you're going to be like, what's the big deal? What's going on here? The other reason why I decided to share the video is because, quite honestly, there is no other way to explain what was going on in that video. Like, I can tell you, but showing you is a whole other situation. Does that make sense? Sometimes you have to just let people see it for themselves. That's the cold, hard truth. My words cannot convey what was in that video. And quite frankly, it cannot convey even what your children are really up to. But when you saw it, I think pretty much everybody got the message, right? Did anybody not get the message? Once you saw that video, that was pretty loud and clear. Anonymous, we're going to talk about that because I feel like a lot of people, a lot of parents are in such denial that they believe that this is something new. They believe that our children are just acting out in this way. And this is just a recent situation. This has been ongoing. I don't even want to say brewing because this is past brewing. This has been happening for a very, very long time. How do we get in front of it is the question, right? At some point, we've got to talk about solutions. So do we need to see the video? Let me just see. How many of you have not seen the video? Gabby says it's on social media anyway. Leroy says he couldn't open it up, so show it. All right, well, we're all adults here, and if you're not an adult, you've probably definitely already seen the video. Miss Ruby hasn't seen it. Beat says about they want to drop their kids at Kimana Bay on a Saturday night just to hang out with the boys. Debbie wants to see it. Ruby, all right, let's watch the video. Folks, be warned. It is adult content. Maria hasn't seen it. Graham hasn't seen it. Okay, well, it sounds like a lot of you haven't seen it. Evelyn says she's seen it twice, unfortunately. Okay, let's see the video. Folks, all I can tell you is you're an adult. If you're a little bit shaky, sit down. Okay? Because this might knock you off your feet. Here it is. This is what our young people, some of our young people, are doing and up to in our government schools. And I'm pretty sure, to some extent, private schools as well. Kenneth, unfortunately, I have no way of hiding the videos, hiding the faces. The request did go in to see if my videographer can do anything about that. That's going to take quite some time of video editing for him to be able to do that. So it's on his list, and I don't even know when he's going to get to it. And I struggle with that, Kenneth, because at the end of the day, you know, these children did what they did knowing full well. How can you walk around pretending to be what do you call it? Walking around pretending to be an interviewer, right? Kids see somebody else recording it, and you not know that this is going to go on social media. Every single child who participated in that video had to have known that. And they had to have known that as a teenager, you're sitting down having a conversation, a very bold and adult conversation about sex, and that's being recorded. So wherever that ends up, the one thing that you would know as a child is that this is going to go viral. There's no one who can tell me that those children don't know that. Come on now. These children live on social media. They know exactly what they're doing. And in fact, I think that the Instagram page, somebody just sent it to me again this morning, the Instagram page is still up. Okay. I've reported it to Instagram. Clearly, Instagram sees nothing wrong with it because they have not taken it down. And I can tell you that Instagram is like Facebook. Well, they're owned by Facebook. So they're really strict in terms of content. And it is up on another page now as well. I don't even know who this person is, but this has a lot of followers. And so now it's being picked up by other media around the world. All right. Well, you guys want to play it? Frank says they need to be shamed to change. Let's just play it, folks.
All right, you already know Moolah topping back in, like back at it again with another banger. You feel me? And today we here with Rihanna. All right, Rihanna. The question of the day is biggest wood size you've ever seen. We need the exact measurements.
Exact measurements, details, and everything.
All that.
8
8?
8 inches. Yeah.
Was that hard or soft?
Hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
Alright, today we here with
Omar.
Alright, so the question of the day is which shorties you like? The Beckies, dark skins, or the Latina shorties?
The Beckies. What do you mean the Beckies? Like what?
White girls.
No, bro, I don't like white girls, bro.
What you mean, why not?
Bro, they're too crazy. No, bro, I don't like white girls.
Alright, next question. Which one of them you think have the fattest pum pum?
I don't know, fam. Just pick one. I still a virgin.
Alright, today we here with
Tito, you already know.
the question of the day is you like your pum pum fat or skinny?
You know I have to go with the fattest, fam, because you know like that the skinny can't work. It just can't work, fam.
Skinny can't work.
It just can't work.
Oh, you say you love it fat.
Of course.
Plump.
No.
So you mean, fam?
Oh, fine. It just gotta be a good size enough.
I feel you. We out.
Yo.
You already know it's Moolah and we're back again with another banger. You feel me? Alright, today we here with
Vashti.
Alright, the question of the day is craziest place you've ever did it.
Damn.
No way crazy. None.
Just give us an idea, you know, a little spot. You feel me?
Nothing crazy.
Nothing crazy.
Nothing crazy.
Alright, you already know it's Moolah back again with another banger. You already know the vibes. Today we go.
Morning cut, yeah.
Alright. So the question of the day is craziest place you've ever gotten head.
In my room, to be honest.
In your room, what you say?
I tell you the craziest place I got head. You see right there, brother. You see right there with them little infants.
Yo,
right there.
infant killer. What now, killer?
Alright, so I hear it.
Yeah, son, what I mean, entertainment.
Alright. So how you like your girls? Fat, skinny, or chubby?
I mean, you can tell you honest truth. I like them fucking big boned girl, you know.
Alright. What the youngest age you do date that girl?
Youngest age, blood.
Yeah.
From your 9, your mind. From your 30.
Alright, today you already know Mula back again with another banger. You feel me? Alright, today we're here with.
Nah, you don't know.
Alright, now the question of the day is, how you like your pum pum, fat or skinny?
Shit, you know me, I like a fatter than a motherfucker.
God damn! My nigga. Alright, Smoline, we're back again with another banger! You feel me? Get your glass out the camera, boy. Alright, today we're here with
Kiefer. Follow me on IG at Old Keith.
What is you doing?
Alright, the question of the day is craziest place you've ever given head.
Giving head? You got me fucked up.
Hold on. My name is Harrison. Who are we here with today?
Kumi.
Alright. Question of the day is craziest place you've ever given somebody head. Answer truthfully.
Truthfully, I like that.
You gotta be honest.
On the beach.
On the beach? Wait, who?
They all know
You gotta know that. Jay.
Okay. Second question. Biggest wood size you've ever dealt with? We need exact measurements.
To the dot.
6.5.
Was that on hard or soft?
I can say soft.
Alright, Smola, we're back again with another banger! You feel me? And today we're here with
Caleb.
Alright, Caleb, the question of the day, light skins, dark skins, or Latinas?
Light skins, fam.
What you say to light skins?
Cause they look
So what's
sexy.
up with the Latinos, man?
No, fam.
Come on, bro.
Cause they sexy.
Oh, you say light skin, sack, fatty.
Yes, fam.
Alright. My name is Harris. Who are we here with today?
Daily.
Alright. Craziest place you've ever given head?
You have to answer.
Nowhere.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap. No bullshit, bro.
So.
That's cap. No, it's not.
Be honest, man.
I am being honest.
No, be honest.
I am being honest.
Alright, second question. I'm gonna give you head first, or you gotta give him head first?
You gotta give me head first.
Why?
Because I need to feel the sensation before I give him.
So the man got feel sensation, dude.
No, he gotta give me, then I give him.
Okay, we feel you.
That's one thing, man.
Alright.
What's this for? No, fam, fouled over, yeah, fam.
The question of the day is, do you like your pum pum fat or skinny?
It depends.
You gotta be specific, depends on what.
Like, she got hit before. They come brand new. Fat.
I feel you.
I put better be fat, fam.
Yeah, fat.
Fat and wet, fam. What? Foundation, what?
That way. Alright, we out.
My nigga.
Yeah. Alright, yo, today we here with
Jamie.
Z. Alright, so the question of the day is, what flavor pum pum you like?
I don't eat no pum pum.
You not supposed to?
You're not supposed to. My daughter.
So your daddy you poop it? What? Alright, today we here with
CJ, you know the vibe. Zay, don't know.
Alright. So the question of the day is, which shorties you like better? Latina, black shorties, or the Beckies?
We'll have to go with the Latinas, fam. You know they got
feel
no.
you.
You know they got
that rock skin. Vibes, man. What you say? What you say? Like coca.
bodybuilders. But I gotta go with that Latina too, fam. Yes, sir, fam. Yes.
Today we here with. The question of the day is, what you think the average dick size should be?
6 inches.
Why you say 6 inches?
It's average. Okay, average for what age?
It's average in general.
7.
7. Alright. Second question is, light skins or dark skins?
Dark skins.
Why you say dark skins? What you have against the light skin?
I already dated a light skin and their pride is just too high. Dark skins they have better loyalty.
I feel you. Black no crack, you feel me?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I won't see the video after that. All I do.
Alright, today we here with.
Kami. Tavana.
Alright, so the question of the day is, what you think the average dick size should be?
I can say 7.5.
7.5? What you think?
I don't know to ask me that question. You can't ask me that.
What you mean? So answer the question.
You can't ask me that.
No, what you think it should be?
You can't ask me that.
Why can't I ask you that question? Today we here with.
Special.
Alright, so the question of the day is, do you believe that a man should give head when you give head first?
That depends.
On?
I don't know.
Alright, second question is, yo, fuck the school bell. Where your body count?
0.
All right, folks. I know that was difficult to see. And the fact that so many of you had not seen it. And I'm looking at it, thinking about the logistics of going through. In some of those videos, there's like 5 or 6 kids. The logistics of even going through and trying to hide every single face is quite an undertaking from an editing perspective. The one thing that I found interesting, though, is whoever put this out there, which I'm assuming it's the young man who's doing the interviewing, he actually took time to post edit. Did you notice that he inserted like certain bits and pieces afterwards from, like, I guess movies or whatever? These kids have a lot of time on their hands, a lot of skill too, that evidently the parents have no clue what is going on. So let me talk about a couple of things that this brings to mind for me. First of all, as a parent, you have got to start doing your job, and you have to start early. There comes a point in time when you cannot blame anybody else for the behavior of your children but yourselves. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Now, yes, they're kids. They are sometimes going to concede to peer pressure. They're going to do stupid stuff like this. They're going to have totally inappropriate conversations that they shouldn't be in a million years having. Now, in the world that we live in, they're going to record it, and they themselves are going to put it out there and distribute it to a wide audience. If you have never had a conversation with your young girls and boys, because I want to talk about how we are always holding young ladies to a particular standard. And don't ever think that our young men should be held to the exact same standard, right? So we tell the girls, you must remain chaste. You must do the most to be respectful to yourselves and to gain respect from others. Well, who do you think the young men are doing the things that they do with? You also need to be having the conversation, the same conversations with your young men as well. Hold boys and girls equally accountable for their behavior. But the bigger picture here that none of us want to talk about is how, as a community, we're over sexualized. We have normalized sex from long time here, folks. And the hard, cold truth is we're now holding these young people to a standard here in the 21st century and talking about what they're doing. But this has been going on a long time. It's nothing new. And not only is it nothing new, I mean, maybe the exposure is at a different level now. Now we actually see. We're not just talking about, well, we're hearing stories from teachers that this is what's happening in our schools and this is what's going on. Now we get to see a video that proves for these children to be having the mature adult conversations about sex and sexual acts that you just saw in that video. This is no joke. I kind of wonder if some of those young girls even know what they're talking about. Because honestly, as an experienced woman, I'm like, how old do you think they are? Talking about 8 inches? 8 inches of what? You know what 8 inches I would have been getting at that age? At Lottie's words of wisdom. She wouldn't have had no pearls of wisdom that day. That would have been that gold-studded, sapphire-endorsed belt on my ass. Now listen to me. I grew up a product of spoil the child. What is it? Spare the rod, spoil the child. I grew up in that environment, and I understand that that's the Caribbean approach. I don't actually believe that that's the best approach. But I get it. We all want to beat our children because we think that's the only way to control them. But how you need to be controlling your children is by having real conversations with them as early as possible. We as a community are over-sexualized. Let's break it down a little bit, folks. Let's think about it. Every single soca, reggae, calypso, dance hall, what other genres we got? Country, hip hop, I don't want to stop, whatever genre we're into, probably except for jazz. Jazz doesn't tend to be really over-sexualized, but every other genre pretty much. And I guess we can exclude the Christian music. It's all about whining and grinding and doing the most. If I had to recount every single song with my name in it, I don't know why they always picking on Sandra about give me a Julie Mango and this and that. What the hell do you think these songs are about? Every single event that we attend, it's all about Batty Rider shorts, winding up. The only thing we know how to do is wind up on people. So our children growing up see a lot of this. And you know what is so amazing to me is as parents, we're so used to it. It's such a social norm. This is where Dr. Frank, thank you so much for being here in the conversation with us. This is such a social norm that we don't see anything wrong with it. In fact, the children who are not doing those things are the ones who who are made to feel different and peculiar, and something is wrong with you that you can't have a conversation about sex in schools. So the norm of what we're even willing to talk about has changed. We have it on full display. The difference is maybe back in the day it was a little bit more hidden, and I don't even know if that's the case. I want some of you older heads to talk to me now. Dr. Frank, you want to come on the show and have this conversation? Let me send you the link. I'm going to send you this link on WhatsApp. Because honestly, the more I thought about this, the more I realized that our older people don't need to be saying much of anything in this conversation, actually, because they are part of the problem, right? So they are the ones who are going to sit back and talk about what young people are doing as though they have no recollection of their own youth and what they were up to and what they were doing. Let me tell you some of the stories that I have heard. I wasn't there because I ain't that old, but some of it is hard to argue with because we see the proof in the pudding. How many people do you know that are double cousins? First cousin on the mama side and first cousin on the papa side. How exactly does that happen? Let's talk about some of the slackness that historically we have had in our communities, right? Since we want to pretend that these children are some sort of new phenomena, and this is so unusual. Let's be honest. I know a couple people like that. How many of us, 50 and older, I'm not 50 yet, but let's just push the envelope here, grew up not even knowing who your dad is? You have no clue. You see, you only get to these types of predicaments as a society when you've been up to no good for a little while. Thank God that we didn't have Jerry Springer back in the 40s, the 30s, the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now the 2000s plus. Because the truth of the matter is, this has been happening for a really long time. And again, we're not having the conversations. We're not being honest with each other, right? The conversations that we want to have is how we're such a Christian society. And we all want to go to church, every single one day Christians, and we're going to pretend for the rest of the week. How many of you go to church, you talk about you're Christians, you're fornicating, you got how many children by how many different men, and then you're looking at your children saying what to them? Most of you are not even having a conversation with them. You're not even saying, listen, I have made my mistakes. I don't want you to make the same mistakes. Let's talk about it. You're not even doing that much for the benefit of your children. Al says sex is natural. It shouldn't be shameful. I agree with you 1,000%. However, sex comes with a lot of responsibility. That when you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, even 18 years old, when you're an adult, a lot of times you are just not ready. See what Gregory says? Decades. I'm telling you. Go talk to your grandparents. Start digging a little bit further. There are sisters in every single district, North Side, Georgetown for sure, and beyond, who are now all up in their 60s and 70s that were having children for the same man. Sometimes he might have been married to one of them. Sometimes he wasn't. So when you talk about the social issues that we as a community are having, I think the first part of that conversation has to be truthful. It has to be admitting where we have come from, right? We have to admit our history. I'm thinking of one individual in particular. He's now in his 80s. And I've known him for a very, very long time. And when I met him, we were both in the progressives together. We'd have a lot of conversations. And even in his 80s, he talks very freely about sex. He not got a problem with it. And he would say to me, boy, Sandy, I used to have sex so many times. And my day, I would lose count. And I said, really? Here we are again in my mind thinking, oh, you're in your 80s. Well, at that time, he was in his 80s. But surely you were a good little boy until what? He said, please, Sandy, I started having sex when I was 9 years old. I was like, huh? Now you do the math. If he's in his 80s now, 9 years old, how long ago that is? Say he's 85, because I think that's about what he is. And this is 2000 and what year are we in? 2021. Okay, let's do a little bit of math here. I see you, Dr. Frank. I'm coming. So give him the benefit of the doubt. That would have been 1941, way before I was born. And he was going around having sex at age 9. And up to this day, he don't see nothing wrong with that. We have over-sexualized our children. We have over-sexualized the music. Children are being abused in our communities. For many, many years, we wouldn't even talk about that. We're slowly getting there. We refuse to protect our children with a sex offenders registry. We have politicians that are known child predators and child molesters. We have pastors that are fornicating with the entire congregation almost. And then we're going to sit down and talk about our young people and wanting to hold them to this bit of a fake standard. Dr. Frank, you ready? Good morning.
Good morning, Sandy. What a topic this morning.
I can't hear you. Can you guys hear Dr. Frank?
What a topic this morning. Did you hear that?
I'm not sure if it's me, but I can't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Anybody else can hear Dr. Frank?
Can you hear me?
Good morning, Alice. Louis. Jasmine says, ask the parents if they discipline their children.
Hello?
Okay, you guys can hear, but I can't hear. This is so weird. Okay, Dr. Frank, I'm going to give me 1 second. I think maybe I need to refresh my connection here. So 1 quick second.
Okay.
Because if you guys can hear him and I
can hear
can't,
me?
then clearly it's an issue in my end. So let me just refresh. Hold on 1 second, Dr. Frank.
Is she have the problem? I hearing you too hard.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Dr. Frank. Good morning.
Good morning.
I've put on my headset so I can hear you because for some reason I'm not hearing you otherwise. But am I telling any lies this morning?
No, I mean, I think that you're, if you hear me, I think you're straight on target here. It's interesting that the conversation should come about this morning after that. Okay. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm saying it's strange that the conversation would come about this morning after seeing that video. because just let me say one or two positive things about the video and what it tells me. The video is very well made, as almost like it's like a documentary in a way. It is actually an exploration of the actual sexual attitudes of the children and their willingness to become involved in that particular discussion. So from the point of view of a person who has done critical communicative analysis as a method of research since 1972, that sort of stuff is very useful to us to be able to analyze how we can take the methodology and transform it to use a particular form, but the content then changes. So the content in itself is what we're critical of, not the interactive play between the youngsters to be able to show their knowledge and to get the knowledge of other students as well. The whole context of sexuality in that particular context is what I think we're concerned about. Children are being taught sexuality in schools, and many schools, but they're being taught that sexuality from a more proactive and positive type of perspective. This is the reason why when a school system or when a society fails to deal with the natural interests of children, it loses them because they will create their own pathway to gaining that knowledge and perhaps being entertained by it rather than being enlightened by it. And again, that's where we have the problem. So the natural curiosity of young children is something that we always seize upon and we lead it. We don't let them lead it. We turn it into something good. We don't let them turn it into something that's very derogatory. We find that again in the music, that a natural inclination to want to dance and to make music and be creative, and they turn that into dirty gangster rap rather than and criminal type of attitudes and behavior rather than turning it into something positive. Then we have, of course, the commercial aspect where the commercial society sees nothing else but profit as the main objective and goal. And this isn't just about every aspect of life. So they exploit our sexuality, they exploit our religion, or actually our basic instinct to connect with the universe and to connect with what most of us would say is spiritual. They turn that into a religion that enslaves and exploits rather than liberates. So I always have said that if we have people who are aware of the natural inclinations of human beings, and we see that so heavily in students and in the student population, that if we don't seize upon it, someone else will seize upon it, that curiosity, and they will lead it in their way. You've been talking for a very long time about the fact that our society is sexualized long before we had the commercial mechanisms to be able to reach large audiences, because we are talking about our history and the history of slavery and the role of sexuality and slavery as a way of actually satisfying people rather than satisfying them through their being oriented towards achieving more socially acceptable and rewarding goals.
Okay, so let me break down. You've said a lot, Dr. Frank. So let me break it down a little bit for the benefit of our listeners, because Dr. Frank, you're a very intellectual person. I think a lot of times people are listening with their ears, but they're not understanding with their minds. So we need to break down some of what you've said, because you've said a lot already in that short space of time. So the one thing that you've said, and I completely agree with you on this, because I think that this is a point that maybe was missed by a lot of people. Whilst we are castigating our young people for having this conversation and for using the medium in which they use to put the information out there, at the same time, we also have to acknowledge the fact that by them doing so, they have forced us as a community to even have this conversation, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. So, in fact, it is a conversation that we need to be having on an ongoing and regular basis, not just as adults from one adult to the next, but in fact with our children. And I think for me, this is where I know that there is a definite disconnect and breakdown in the system, and that parents are not doing that. And they are expecting someone else to do that job for them. And so I want to share a little bit of personal experience. You guys hear me talk about Aunt Lottie all the time, and she has passed on. She's now deceased. And Aunt Lottie, I remember, used to make me so uncomfortable, I should say, is the correct word, as a teenager, when she used to bring up sex. Because I'm thinking, why is this old lady talking to me about sex? But she hammered it home on a consistent and constant basis. The message was always very clear. Don't engage in it, but let's talk about it anyway. And she would talk about, the feelings that perhaps a young person might have. Oh, do you have a crush on this person? Do you like this person? And I'm just like, it used to actually make me cringe to I didn't want to talk to her about it, but she would force the conversation. And I have to wonder how many of our parents who are now castigating the young people in this video having that conversation with their children. The other point that I think Dr. Frank makes, and I think is useful to make, is that, as I was saying earlier, we live in a community, in a society that from Adam and Eve did what they did, probably, has always been more sexualized than it should have been. From the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? That entire city was destroyed because of the type of stuff that they engaged in. Historically, Dr. Frank, if we looked at the history of sex, even amongst teens and adults using teenagers, using teen boys, etc., for sexual pleasure, this is something that dates back to the times of, ancient Greece. So this isn't something new. I was talking about it in more recent terms, 40s, 50s, 60s in Cayman, but we could go way beyond that. I think what is probably a little bit different is that because of our Christian values and our Christian beliefs, we have transcended from the Greeks being very open and flagrant with it and not caring to being more, well, this isn't something that is meant for the public eye, for public discourse. They were still doing it and they were hiding it. We talk about, for example, royalty. How many stories do we not hear of royalty back in the 1600s, 1700s, having all sorts of outside children, taking women as they wanted, and that included teenagers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Al summed it up when he said, listen, at its very foundation, at its very core, there's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing wrong with admitting that we are sexual creatures. DJ Yo-Yo says it's a fake standard, as this day kids are more sexually educated by the music they listen to than what they're learning in school, especially with most parents listening and dancing to some of the music. But is that really the case, DJ Yo-Yo? Right. I mean, that's our reality, and that's what we think. Dr. Frank, you have lived through, I didn't, but you have lived through the flower child years of the 70s. What was that like? Free love, free sex, smoking pot, doing the most?
Right. I mean, I was at Woodstock, for instance, Sandy, and 68? Yes, 68 or 69 it was, right? 69. And, that whole particular generation was when people could actually come out and admit that their sexual drive was natural and that they should be allowed to practice their sexuality without inhibitions or without constraints from the society. But what happened as a result of that movement or that revolution or that counterculture is that they started to be a dialogue between the society as a whole and the people in the counterculture. And as you could see from the 70s, although the music was continuously sexualized, that had something to do with the established media change in terms of trying to profit from the counterculture, and also the people in the counterculture, becoming more accustomed to their sexuality to the point where they did not have to exhibit it or push it in the face of other people. So it became more private again. So there is a difference between the private sexuality of people and the publicized and public sexuality and exhibitions of sexuality. And I think even when we look at the gospel, one of the things that we're trying to do, or what the gospel was trying to do, is to sort of create a balance. In Greek society, the sexuality became much like the whole gladiator situation, the situation in the arena, that the most sacred and private things become public things. And that is, again, where regulation comes in, or where people are taught and tutored to not disrespect the thing that is sacred. Sexuality is sacred. That's what the Bible is saying. You should not disrespect it because it's sacred. It is the most sacred and sweetest pleasure that you can experience as a human being, other than perhaps the pleasure of your spirituality when it's fully manifested. So it is something that we should cherish. We should not disrespect. We should not disgrace, and we should not use foolishly. Now, the language in which those particular lessons are taught to us might seem to be very restrictive, and so some people misinterpret to the point that we do not even talk about sexuality, that we dress in a very restricted and confined manner. But at the end of the day, if there's not sensible conversation about that which continues to procreate and that which continues to regenerate humanity, then we basically lose quite a lot, which is the very essence of our ability to perpetuate our species. So this is not a conversation that should not be in the school. This is a conversation like your grandmother or your aunt thought should begin at a very early age, although the child might feel uncomfortable with the conversation. But a child only feels uncomfortable with its conversation dealing with sexuality after the child is already introduced to a culture which has issues with sexuality. We see this between the rearing of the white middle class child and the rearing of the black working class child. The child in the black family, at least the one that I came from, we learn our sexuality through experimentation with each other at a very early age. The man that you referred to as 9 years when he started, I'm sure I was much younger than 9 when I started. And I never got any conversations or any answers from our parents, although they had us because of sexual intercourse. They're hiding everything from their children because we were never socialized. They were never socialized to deal with these instances. And most of what people in our community were afraid of is really girls getting pregnant and the economic burden and shame that might come from pregnancies of unwed mothers. But from the point of view of protecting that sacredness of sexuality, and that, you know, there was no thought about that because of that fact that we lack the particular knowledge base to convey to people the wealth that one actually owns in that intimacy type of situation. And so when we see these things happening where it's the rap music, it is the dumbing down of the whole thing, it is the disrespect of the women, and this boy was very disrespectful of women in those particular videos because he didn't even make the distinction between the female and the male. because the female is the one that is exploited and the male is the one that is the exploiter. And we know that from pornography, and we know that from all the other areas that we have visited in terms of studying sexuality and the expression and the meaning in terms of commercialization of our sexuality. Because what the boy started is what he's seen already. The fact that he made such a good video, because he captivates his audience, regardless of whether or not we don't like it or not. He captivates us also. And in the fact is that he is coming and say, wow, here it is. You're hiding this. But at the end of the day, here it is. And this is the absolute truth, that this is the way it is. And he has been allowed to portray it within his own context and within his own peer group, to go on Instagram, for instance, and get an audience and get the kind of attention that he's now getting for a particular product. Now, you have said that in a way, because I mean, I'm a liberal, real liberal in many ways, because I grew up in the 60s and 70s in the United States when we were having to face many of these issues. But then again, my problem is that I came from a society that was very rigidly Christian in terms of the values, that did not deal properly and effectively with the remnants of sexuality during slavery and post-emancipation, because sexual gratification is very important. And when people go to sexual gratification rather than education and the accomplishments which comes from being a trained and professional person that can acquire goals and accomplishments and the rewards of goals and accomplishment, where else is there that you're going to focus if not on the sexuality that you've already found that there is an ego that is involved and ego gratification is involved. Now, when we understand the difference between the ego and the self, the inner and the outer parts of us, the part that is a result of social formation, which is the ego that we're talking about, and the male Caribbean ego, and how Black men became so dependent upon that ego and satisfying that ego through sexuality as a result of slavery and the machoism that you do not see in the African communities in Africa. So when you look and do comparative analysis, because between the behavior of a African male from Kenya, many of them that are here living in this country that I know, and you look at the behavior of a West Indian like myself, and the machoism of me, the West Indian, versus the lack of that machoism in the Kenyan. When we begin to look at all these things together, Sandra, we get a picture of the fact of the misguided view that the Caribbean man has of his sexuality and the importance of his sexuality, because at the end of the day, he's not struggling against anybody else but the next man. But rather than struggling against and competing against the next man, according to his education, according to his material accomplishments, because of his social contribution, he's competing against the next man based upon how many baby mothers he got, and so forth and so on. So when we look at it, and this is the reason why I say identity is so important to education. Your identity was being molded by your aunt. The best thing that ever happened to you, I said always, is that they took you out of this environment, which is a corrupted and corroded social environment. And when I say these things, I say them as a sociologist, but I also have a kind of emotions involved in it, because my studies are related to me as well as to the objective world. And that is the reason why I have a completely different relationship to my my subject matter than most people who are looking from the outside. I am inside looking from the outside using the lenses of a researcher, an academic, but at the same time, it's me that I'm studying. It's me that is the subject of my inquiry. And as we look more at how to correct the educational problems in this country, how are we going to correct the educational problems if we don't have people like you who have a particular moral bearing, but nevertheless, you do not shun away from discussing things that might be uncomfortable to other people. And it's that level of being able to get our audience sensitized to the fact that although you are leading the discussions, you are not at all unaware of how many people feel about certain topics. But like you said, the cold truth is necessary, because it's only that way that we are going to be able to make the kinds of repairs that are necessary in our social system. When we're talking about social system, we have to begin with the primary education and secondary education. And you just saw that if it's that bad at that level, what it must be even lower down. It has not just started there at John Gray. It started in primary school. And we know from evidence that primary school children are already having sexual relationships. So
and let me Dr. Frank, let me further break down some of the points that you have made. I can't remember the artist. You might have to help me here, but a number of years ago, I posted an article on social media, and I was just reflecting on what you just said about your own personal experiences, right? I posted an article on social media about oh gosh, I'm picturing the artist. He's a pop, not pop, but a R&B artist in the U.S. But he was talking about how he started having sex around the age of 9 as well, and the sexualization of in particular, the African American male in the American context. And I think a lot of this applies to sort of the Caribbean story and context as well.
But the African age is about 9 too.
Yes, I remember you commenting on this story. I want to say that the artist is I don't know if you remember this, but it wasn't R. Kelly. It was another guy. But anyway, it talked about he's had a few guys help me out here. What is he dated Rihanna for a while. He got in trouble with assaulting Rihanna. What is his name again? Is it Brown? Oh, you guys gonna help me. His face is right there. I'm gonna try to find that article, but it was such an interesting article. And I remember you commenting on it, that you had read the article. And in so many respects, the article opened your eyes and made you think about your own sexuality, your own experience in a completely different context than you had ever really thought about it before. And I wonder, when we're talking about the fact that people, Chris Brown, let me see if I can find that article. Thank you so much for that, folks. When we talk about
Brown,
I'm going to try to see if I can find. I'm going to see if I can find that article actually. But when we talk about Dr. Frank, the fact that we are having these here's the here it is. This was March the 1st of 2017. And it says, Chris Brown and a nation of raped boys. I'm going to reshare this. And Dr. Frank, you commented, Olivier said, thank you for sharing this. Dr. Frank, you at the time, you may not even remember this because it's been 4 years now, but you said, it may seem like I'm playing up to you seeking approval, but as much as I need high ratings, trust me, when I see this post, is another eye opener for me. patriarchy as a weapon which wounds men by normalizing male rape is a powerful, though in fact, violence is turned to pleasure. Our very heroic death by violent means is exposition of our male sexuality, which is what we believe makes us dominant. The displacement of women and feminine emotions by male aggression and suppression explains emotional retardation on the part of so many of our young boys in society. This concept or way of looking at rape and masculinity is very useful to me. It connects many dots in my own life, and I'm sure my understanding of my own sociology will be better informed by this post. I look forward intellectually from this Ash Wednesday, and you go on to say some other things, but the point really is that, again, we are not having these deeper conversations. And this was an article going all the way back to 2013, right? Where Chris Brown admits to losing his virginity at the age of 8 years of age and growing up in a culture where that was normalized and where everybody thought that that was okay, right? So when we see children in this video who are a little bit older than that, talking about their sexuality, again, we have this appearance of outrage, but the truth of the matter is this is something that as a society, as a world, many communities across the world have been dealing with for a very, very long time. Now, I want us to think about for a minute what transpired last week, because it's so ironic that on the heels of the situation with what happened at Red Bay Primary, where children were some sort of exorcism or something was performed because children were talking about sexuality. Now, one of the things, let me just say this, because someone did reach out to me last night, a parent, and he said, having spoken to his daughter, who was also one of the young children involved in that, I want to read to you exactly what he said in his comments. And I'm glad that as a father, he is taking ownership of the situation and he is interested in speaking to the authorities about what transpired. But listen very carefully to what he said about the situation. He said, "My daughter was one of the students present, only for the session on Wednesday. I spoke to my daughter about it, and she basically said that she was asked by the principal if she was gay, lesbian, or bisexual. My daughter answered that she was bisexual, not knowing what bisexual meant. My daughter is 9 years old, and she has male friends and female friends. And so she thought that's what bisexual meant. She said a lot of the children were crying. I feel that Mrs. Fredericks is truly the definition of a religious fanatic, and she needs some professional help. She's taken things too far. It's all right for her to keep it to herself, but to impose it on others is another thing." So when you hear that situation occurring just last week, Dr. Frank, and then you see this situation occurring this week with these recordings from these children, what comes to mind for you in terms of how adults are handling the situation? So first of all, I thought it was highly inappropriate for a school principal to be asking children whether they are gay, bisexual, or lesbian or whatever. That shouldn't be the conversation that she should be having with those children. But when she does ask the question and children respond in a particular way that obviously she didn't like, the approach then for her is to try to cast out these demons and bring religion into the mix, which can be very confusing, I think, for a lot of people, and sprinkling holy water in them, forcing them to drink holy water, reacting in a frantic and over-excited manner, which really doesn't help children. You need to be able to sit down calmly with children, I think, and have conversations with them that make sense.
Well, I would say that, that the way in which we have, as authority, dealt with unwanted sexuality and practices has, been conditioned over a very long period of time, a Christian actually in authority, a Christian in authority reacting in the way in which this principle is said to have reacted, I don't think that that is outside the culture of the religion and religious education. Although you might want to say that the Cayman Islands school is not a religious school in principle, I think I would sort of not support that. I think our schools are Christian schools because that is also supported in our Constitution. And I mean, I know that Christianity means quite a lot of different things to different folks, and definitely it means a lot different things to me than it means to most people in the establishment. But I would say that the problem that we have not known about these things, or that we've covered them up so much that we have not known about them, is an issue and a very aggrieved concern to me, because it's just like we didn't know about the gangs. And when I said there were gangs, people said, no, they're not gangs. When I said we need early childhood education in 1979, they said, no, we don't need early childhood education. We need the middle school. So I don't normally sort of see something that is wrong simply because something all of a sudden looks right. I like to do more like the comparative sort of look at things. And I'm saying that in our understanding of bisexual orientation is that bisexuality is in that you're referring to that would be in primary. They are bisexuals at that age, it's true, but it doesn't mean that they're chemically bisexuals. They have not decided upon their sex. They have not even started perhaps to even think about it in many cases. And how we think about it and how we begin to practice it, it will be determined by the culture and the cultural orientation and who actually approaches you first sexually. So there's a lot of that we need to be considering, quite honestly, in the school system when we have people who are coming in and saying, well, somebody's actually bisexual and somebody's actually heterosexual and somebody is this. These are new premises that is supported by some research, but it's not authority simply because it's coming from certain circles that might also have an agenda. And I have to pay attention to that as well. I don't necessarily support many of the views that sexuality is one of the liberating factors that we need to be concerned about. I think we need to be concerned about parents having more time to help socialize and educate their children, and they'll be liberated from a $6 an hour sort of reward. I think that just the entire pressures, materialistic pressures that we put on people in what it makes them incapable of really dealing with the real job of raising positive, healthy citizens. And it cannot be done by the school alone. The family is a very important partner in the socialization and education processes for people. We devalue that to the extent that we destroy families, we destroy communities, and then we wonder why we have problems in our schools. There is no connection anymore between the schools and the families, or the schools and the communities. And so we see that when one part breaks, the other parts begin to break down as well. That's why people talk more about the holistic approach to understanding and creating solutions to our educational and social problems. You cannot fix the problem of education without fixing the problems in the communities. You cannot fix the problems of the community without fixing the problems in the homes and the families. And you will not fix those as long as we allow those dominant people who run industry to do what the hell they want with labor and human capital, as if it belongs to them and not to the society as a whole. And this is why certain philosophical claims, certain religious and spiritual claims are important when people say that the humanity of a person is not so much about their sexual practices, but they're practices as human beings, fulfilling the needs and requirements of a society as if they are the society, they are the center of the universe, because we are all just a manifestation of our own social and psychic environment. And just to say, from the point of view of that principle again, dealing with the issues of sexuality, I believe that the information that are coming to her through the church is wrong. I believe some of the information that is coming through certain pro groups that is talking about sexuality and liberalization of these particular issues, that it's wrong within the Caymanian context and the Caribbean context, that we have to have a holistic approach to sexuality. And it's not just something that we figure out by ourselves that doesn't have a relationship to anything. Because, for instance, if I'm going to be a mother, and I'm going to be a babe, a mother rather than a wife to somebody, it's a difference. But if I'm going to just be a babe, a mother, my sexuality, my sexual behavior and morality can be different than if I'm going to be a wife. And what kinds of institutions should I be ideally connected with if I'm going to be a wife? If I'm going to be a wife and I'm connected to the rap music and the dance hall rather than connected to the Pentecostal church and dancing there, these are all choices that people have to make, and we have to help them to make choices. But we make choices that eventually is going to improve our own individual existence and the existence of our family. The focus has to come back to what it is that you want to accomplish as an individual when you're making your choices. Like you wanted to accomplish certain things. You married a man, you have a child, and the focus is the child. For both you and your husband, it is not outside that the focus is. And as a result of that, you can get a parent who's quite capable of rearing the child by themselves without the assistance of the social institutions and educational institutions. But in many cases, Sandra, you know that these parents have absolutely not the exposure and education and not the time to be able to figure out these things. And the worst thing about it is that everybody have their opinion. And once a person has their opinion, you don't get over that too easily. So suggesting things to people and how they could improve their lives is not an easy thing for a counselor in the school, for a teacher in the school. And so they give up. They say, you know what? I am not going to lose my job because of this. I am going to leave it to the people who are responsible, the minister, the government, and those people and those departments, those people who are removed on a day-to-day basis with the actual dynamics of the problem. And therefore, because there's no interfacing between the different segments, we come to the stymie. And what you do in your programs is that you give a possibility for a little vent to come in. When people can actually see that things like this, and that's one of the reasons why I say, put the video out there. Put it out there, because it's not just the kids that are wrong. It's the parents. And it's not just the parents. We must hold the minister responsible, the Minister of Education. It is not just her. We must also hold those people who continue to elect and select people who have no concept of what modern institutions are and how we can deal with them in such a way as to get the results that we put on paper that we deem necessary for the improvement and the maintenance of our society.
Let's break it down. We have a few comments coming in, but before we do so, let me also share other breaking news. As you guys know, here on CMR, we give it to you as it's happening. No filters allowed, is what the talk part of it says here in the program. I've been informed this morning at 8:34 a.m. that the task force and dogs are at Clifton Hunter School searching. What a mess. It just continues from one thing to the next. Folks, do not be shy about joining the conversation. I see many of you sending in your comments. But do remember that you can also call in to the program if you wish to do so.
Yeah. It's a the Cold Hard Truth News Podcast. Cold Hard Truth News Podcast. Come make we talk on the live broadcast. It's a the Cayman #1 live talk show. Come make we talk where you go on the news.
All right, folks, this is your #1 talk show. There's no doubt about that. And we're here to hear your voices and to see what you have to say. So, Carolyn, very good comment here. Behind a good man is a good woman. Behind a good woman is a good family. And behind a good family is good community. Carolyn, thank you for acknowledging the interconnectivity of all of our lives and how we need to be viewing this entire process. So Darlene says, Dr. Frank is so refreshing when he speaks the truth. Sherry Ann says the churches and schools have become a business. Damien shares a lot of this is going on in private schools. Absolutely. Now, listen, Damien and everyone else, we're not here to talk about private versus public schools in the sense that we are pretending somehow that this doesn't happen in all of our schools. This is happening across the Cayman Islands, folks. It doesn't matter whether you go to a private school or public school. Do I need to remind you that not that long ago, a couple months ago, in fact, we were having a discussion about a private school teacher who was engaging in an online, talk about sex, she was engaging in online sex for sale. So when we have our teenagers talking about it, recording it and putting it out there, I have to say, well, if you got teachers in the very private institutions who are out there selling their sexuality for a price with full frontal photos that folks are still online, come on now. Should we really be all of that surprised that our young people are likewise talking about sex and that potentially some of them may even be engaging in sex? Sex is everywhere. It's clearly for sale, right? So again, the cold hard truth dictates that we not ignore the issue and that we understand, in fact, that this is a very widespread situation. One of my biggest issues with Christianity and what is happening in our churches is that the church teaches us to hide a lot of things that should be at the forefront of the discussions that we are having in our communities. So we are told, oh, let's continue to not have these discussions, pretend like it's not happening. Don't talk to your young people about sex because somehow that is too incredibly taboo. It shouldn't be a taboo discussion, and I'm hoping that we can normalize that to some extent here today, at least having the discussion around it. And I can assure you that teacher still has her photos. I was just having a look because I'm wondering, is she even bothered to take them down? She still has those photos very much up on the web. So, Dr. Frank, something's going on with your camera. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but you might want to reposition the camera. I don't know if we lost Dr. Frank, but let's go ahead and read a few more of your comments. So thank you to Judy. Judy says, Sandy, speaking truth, teens have been interested in sex since time immemorial. This isn't new. We're just not used to seeing it laid out before us like this. Yes, the variables of highly sexualized music, accessible music, adverts, pornography, etc., is a major factor, but generally, at some, what kids need is guidance on negotiating their thoughts, feelings, and inclinations about sex, music, peer pressure. This is how we cultivate self-respect and integrity in our young people. And she goes on to say, basically, that these are the types of conversations that we need to have. Nautical One, Ed says, when I think back on my own childhood and adolescence, I recall, Cayman is very judgmental and uptight. Unfortunately, little has changed in that context. And think of some of the things said in our parliament by some MPs. Quite interestingly enough, just yesterday, someone was sending me a clip from one such MP from the district of West Bay talking about the LGBT community in very derogatory terms. Again, we need to be open and have these discussions with a great deal of truth about them, folks. We can't get much further ahead if we continue to ignore the biggest elephants in the room. DJ Yo-Yo says that education begins at home. I take myself as an example, especially being a DJ. I made the decision to stop playing various type of genres of music because of its strong content. For I do not perform or accept contracts for some types of events or play this type of music in my house, as I'm a father of 3, 2 boys and 1 girl, and my wife and I are trying to raise our children to the best way possible, teach them good values. How could I hold accountable any of my 3 children for any kind of misbehavior? Now, unfortunately, the rest of that got caught off there. But very, very good points. Thank you so much. And Judy's post goes on to say a lot more than that. So I hope you guys will actually read it on the link there. So DJ Yo-Yo, I think that comes back to the entire point that we're trying to make here, is that you've got to have conversations with your children, age appropriate, obviously. You know, like you're not going to be sitting down with a 5-year-old talking about the full context of all of this. But a 5-year-old child already has a sense of their body parts. And I mean, from age 3, I was having age appropriate conversations with my daughter about her private parts. And at first she didn't even know what private meant. I had to explain, well, mommy, what does private mean? You know, because that's the term I'm trying to use, the simplest words, but she doesn't know what private means. And as she gets a little bit older, she does now appreciate private means that they're things that we keep to ourselves. We don't share with anyone else. We don't let anyone else have access to it. You've got to be able to break it down to our children and to have these conversations. Now, because a lot of us haven't had the experience of having grown up in that way, right? Having our own parents, our own mothers, our own fathers speaking to us. For example, you know, I think there comes at a very early age, 3, 4 years old, when a child has to know that their body is respected. And this is one of the reasons, I think Dr. Frank is back with us, but this is one of the reasons why I do not believe in beating children. I don't believe in forcing children to hug and kiss people that they're not interested in. I think you need to give them the due respect that they deserve and the ownership of their own bodies as well that they deserve. And that means, folks, giving them the ability to say no to people. So if they want to say no to an adult who wants to kiss them, and I don't care whether it's grandma or somebody else, you have to respect your children's ability and right to say no. It is their body. And I still am shocked at how many Caribbean people, when I say that, are saying to me, oh, Sandy, well, now you're taking this too far. This is too far. Is it really too far to say that a 4-year-old's body should be respected? And if they say, please don't touch me, or don't touch me there, or I don't want you to hug me, I don't want you to kiss me, is that really going so far to respect their wishes, to have ownership of the body that they have, Dr. Frank?
No, it's not, Sandy. Did you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Hello?
you.
Yeah, it's not. And I think that what's happening in the world is that a lot of the changes are very sort of sudden because of the way in which we are able to communicate with each other, so that we are having to absorb a lot of foreign ideas about how we should mold our children and how we should exist in family structures, and how we should exist in the school system, and so forth and so on. A lot of this is coming at us. And this is the reason why it is actually necessary to have people who can analyze these new tendencies in education and schooling, and be able to say, well, I think that this is not necessarily appropriate at this particular time for our culture on a general application of these particular theories or tendencies, because we have noticed in the social sciences that many things that are advocated are later, sort of abandoned. And we find that many of the things that the social scientists are teaching are very academic in terms of the base. They have, of course, their sample studies and their studies over periods of time, but it is nothing like the new knowledge that we get from what we call critical communicative research. Because what happens is that the subjects become very important as participants in the way in which we come to conclusions and the way in which we analyze. Mostly the academic stuff, the subjects do not participate in the analysis. They do not participate in drawing the conclusions. And if we are doing the subject studies for the subjects in their environment, then they should be very much involved as much as possible. We have an ideal situation here in the Cayman Islands that we have a small community that could be very interactive. And, the parents associations, parent teachers associations, those types of organizations, the churches, the communities and other areas could be very important in terms of being able to get the information into the necessary institutions. And this is so important that the people who are going to be the parts of the solutions, which we need to be parts of the solution, the participants, the subjects of our studies, that they can buy into what it is that we're trying to do in order to have the transformation in the society. And the whole question of socialization and the role of sexuality in the socialization of children is highly important. And the more localized it can be by an understanding of the social and sexual practices of people and what does it mean overall to the security and the safety and the productivity and happiness of the family, the better off we are. We cannot disconnect the school and from the family. And this is done too long. Who are we educating? Not just a general theory of education that comes from someplace, but a specific look at your population base. What does it require? Do we require values more than we need to teach them mathematics? If we need to teach them values, then let us teach them values as a prerequisite to them studying mathematics. And this is the same argument I get into with people saying, oh, we need trade schools. Well, any fool can tell you that we need trade schools, but what they can't tell us is the pedagogy of trade schools. I mean, is a trade school just about a hammer and a nail and showing people how to cut? Or does the teacher has to also be like Teacher McField, the late Teacher McField, who was teaching values at the same time? He was teaching us how to be socially productive. I told people, I said, you know what? I've observed the Jamaican community here in the Cayman Islands. And I've studied Jamaican history, Jamaican sociology. I've studied Cayman history and Cayman sociology. And therefore, I could tell you that you want trade schools, but you need to understand the values, the role of values in learning, the norms of work, the values of work, all of those things. Even if you go back and you look at the whole growth of capitalism, you go back to the Protestant ethics, you go back to the whole concept of time, how they treated time. Money is time. If you're wasting time, you're losing money. If you make money, you don't waste it because that's wasting time. Those types of things that most of us don't even think about when we're trying to design programs. We find now that those things are very, very, very important. And when we come now again back to the idea of the trade school, the idea of people working in the tourism industry, we have to see, as an observer like myself have seen over the last 40 something years, that one of the problems that we have is that in the early years, Caymanians went into the tourist industry because they were accepted on a level that they wanted to be accepted on from the point of view of their concept of equality. Today, equality has nothing to do with you being able to be taken to a party or taken fishing or on a boat ride by your guests, but rewarding you in such a way that you can associate with those people who you might want to feel associate with and feel more comfortable with because you get the rewards, which is the due pay and the due salary that will allow you to be a productive consumer in the society. So all of these things that you are bringing up has to do with socialization, and it's the most important thing in any kind of education. And we have a small society here that I have observed as a sociologist and as one who has always sought qualitative data, information, rather than quantitative, so that we can tell you. It's just like when I spent so much time visiting the prison to be able to not interview, but have conversations with Sheldon Brown without asking him one direct question until the end. And that question was, Sheldon, can you say, now that you have done a little bit of studies in criminology at a university level through correspondence courses, what's the most important aspect in terms of crime and gang activity? Is it the economics? Is it social? Or it's psychological? I got three of those questions for you. He said the psychological without hesitation. Now, when I compare that to his my knowledge of the history of him and his conversations and everything like that, it stood up. I had spent years arguing that the economic and the social component was the most important. So although this economic and social component might influence the psychological one, it's the psychological basis of the deviant that overrides the psychological part that overrides. Now, when we look at our country, we see all of the mental stress, all of the people that are dropping out or are getting sick in terms of their inability to stay with the system and to perform within the system without creating so much frustration within their own homes to damage their own children because they don't have an outlet, they don't have a hope in the world because they don't see the acceptance of people having problems and talking about them in order to be able to find the solutions to them. All of these things that you have been able to help us to get to the forefront where people can feel a little bit more comfortable about talking about their problems, because problems are a natural part of growth. And we're not growing if we don't exhibit some type of contradictions. And we're not going to survive if we're not going to be able to deal with those contradictions. Just medicating them or ignoring them, that's not going to be the answer to the problem. So you see, on the point of view of an overview, in terms of you starting that conversation this morning, because that particular video is just an indication of the symptoms and the symptomatic type of devaluation of self, devaluation of the other person, the devaluation of the female, the use of the female as an object that should be exploited or should be used to heighten the ego of the male, who finds the lack of possibility of supporting that ego through what most people do in this society to do that, which you get a nice car, you go to the gym, you got enough money to go to the gym, you got enough money to do this, you wear a wig or you wear this and you're okay, and somebody's coming up and say, well, my sexuality is really important, and it's probably what I'm going to use to show that I'm the boss, like I'm the Don. And you go back to the same gang thing again. You go back to that whole machoism that it breeds, and the way in which it satisfies itself, and the way it justifies itself, and all of these things in a little small society like this. I mean, for me, over the years, it's just been one of the reasons why I've stayed here. This was my research site, and it provided me with so many possibilities. I have written over 2,000 pages where I've concentrated on looking at the religious aspects, looking at the religion not just from our aspect, but from the international development of religion, from the time it goes back to Africa, and how it evolves, and how how it has manifested itself in different types of conditions to mold human personality and characters in such a way sometimes that it's difficult to imagine how we could have change without a concerted effort on the part of the people that manage our resources and that directs us in terms of what we should be pursuing as the ideals for our own individual selves and also for the society as a whole. We have at this time a very important role to play with this new government, and you have played such an important role. I'm bringing that movement together, and I see clearly that movement there, and that I am very, very, very happy about, because it gives us the possibility to use your platform and your guidance to be able not only to out some of these challenges that we face, but also to challenge people to become part of the solution to these challenges. And that would be a wonderful thing if what these kids have done at the end of the day is to show that they have taken the initiative and discussing their problems and their way, because of the lack of guidance and the lack of transparency in terms of the communication of information to young people, because what we're doing is that we're using outdated values to decide how we should have conversations and what we should have those conversations about. And you have been the one who have fought over the years with the courts, with the police, with the society to say, I am not wrong when I am interested in truth. And truth you find in the funniest places sometimes, you know? So, yeah.
Dr. Frank, thank you so much. We are out of time, folks. I know this was such an interesting conversation. I want to invite you back on the program, of course, because I think we can't just have one conversation on this and gloss it over and think that we are done. Two quick things I want to say. I do have to go to court this morning because I'm monitoring a couple very, very important court cases that I think the general public is definitely interested in. But there's a couple things I want to say. Number one, we've been talking about the youth program on this platform for a minute. And one of the reasons that I think that it's so incredibly important to launch, and I'm really pushing to get it done as soon as we can, is that we need to give our young people a voice. We saw that young man going around recording. He has skills. I mean, some of you were like, yeah, some of you were, oh, they can't speak proper English, this and that. But let's look at the positive. Like I said, he's got more skills, more editing skills than me. Look at how he was able to put that video together. I think there is so much that could be said, not for the content of what they were doing, but the production of what they were doing. And obviously the desire to be heard. If young people want to talk about sex, obviously the parents are not having the conversation with them. They're turning to their peers, which is most unfortunate. Some of them are giving, bragging rights or talking about things that they may or may not have done. I kind of got the sense that maybe some of that was also made up just to make themselves, look a certain way. Like one guy,
girls in particular.
yeah, and one young man even said, well, what's a Becky? Like he didn't even know what that term meant, which means that, he was a little bit green in terms of the terminology that the young man was using. But I think we need to give them an avenue to have these discussions and to feel safe about it being monitored by an adult supervision. I also want to extend an invitation to other professionals. Obviously, Dr. Frank is a sociologist by training. He is a Caymanian who's well-versed in a lot of these issues and topics. But in addition to that, we have others in our community. We have Carolina Ferreira, for example, from the Cayman Islands Red Cross. Someone has reminded me about the program that the Red Cross has done. We need to keep this in context of what we're discussing here, including the fact that amongst our children, some quarter of all sexual abuse is underage children on underage children. That is a conversation that we are not having enough of. So it's not just adults that can be predatory and that can do things to each other. It is also other adolescents. And we need to have that conversation and make sure that your children understand just because someone is in their age group, even younger or older than them, does not mean that that person can walk up to them and say anything that they wish and do anything that they wish in terms of their behavior. Your children also need to understand that they have a voice and that they have the right to tell someone, I don't want to answer your question. I don't appreciate the nature of your question. I would have loved to have seen some of the people, and maybe somebody did, he cut it out of his editing, I don't really know. But I would have loved to have seen some of those young people say to that young man who was conducting the interview, you know what I'm doing, if I'm doing anything at all or not, is absolutely none of your business. And this is highly inappropriate. A lot of questions. Of course, everyone is asking, where is the minister? As usual, she is MIA, missing in action. We've not heard anything from her about the Red Bay primary situation. We've not heard anything about this. We've not heard anything about the continued drug use in our schools. We had children last week who were passing out, who had their stomachs pumped because of edibles in our school systems. No word from the minister. We continue to press her to be more interactive. This is why no one wanted her to get the ministry back, because she doesn't even talk about it. She doesn't even say, let's have a press conference. Let's go on the talk shows. Let us have this conversation. She simply isn't doing that. So we are holding her to account every opportunity that we get, because we think that she really needs to step up to the plate. Come back from Cayman Brac and do your job here on Grand Cayman that you're being paid so handsomely to do. This position is not just a position and title alone. It is something that you should be invested in. This is the future of this country and the future of us as parents. And this is, without a doubt, really, really lacking on her part. In addition to that, folks, I want to invite all other professionals. If you're in this area, please feel free to contact me. We will continue to have this discourse and conversation. We will invite Dr. Frank back on the program, because I think the next conversation that we need to have is, how do you sit down and talk to your children? What do you need to be saying to them about sex and about sexuality? We're going to be launching our book club soon. And I think one of the books that we need to include in our book club is a really good one on parenting in the 21st century and having these types of conversations with your children. We may not know how to do it because we were not taught how to do it, and we were not exposed with the right skill set on how to get this done. But it doesn't mean that as parents now, we can't do better than the generation before us. We can learn, and we can offer our children a safe haven and a place that they can come. I want to encourage all parents who had children in that video. Your first response should not be, I'm going to give you an assing. I'm going to tear your ass up. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to skin you alive. I've seen some of your comments. That should not be what you're doing here. What you should be doing is saying, we need to have a conversation. We need to sit down. You need to talk to your children and ascertain from your perspective, if what they have said or haven't said is true or not true, and try to elicit some of the information out of them, how they're feeling about what has happened. This, folks, is a moment right now. Here we are in the Cayman Islands, and we have been presented with an opportunity to do right by our children, an opportunity to make this a learnable and teachable moment. Do not allow this opportunity, folks, to fly by and you either do nothing at all out of embarrassment or do the wrong thing by trying to beat your children. Talk to your children, right? Some of you are saying, let's put all the blame on the shoulders of the parents. I don't think you need to put the blame all on the shoulders of the parents or the children. I think this is just a moment that we have to recognize that we have been presented with an opportunity like no other, that we can learn and really try to move past this in a positive way. But we have to accept it. We can't just gloss over it and continue later today, business as usual. That's not the aim here or the goal. We should really be trying to learn from this situation. Dr. Frank, any final comments before we wrap it up here today? I think you've got yourself muted. Gina, thank you for that comment. Jean Scott, thank you. Abigail says parents have to do their part and ensure their kids have great morals, and also these cell phones technology. Yes, I do agree with why are cell phones so readily available in our schools as well. We see where they are being used to exasperate the situation, even with the fights in the schools, right? All these kids think that everything should be on social media and that it's cool to do so. So once people whip out a phone camera, that ups the ante in terms of what you want to say and what you want to do. So all of a sudden, children are going to start throwing down and fighting simply because they know that it is being recorded. And so I think the school administrators need to look a bit more closely at ensuring that there are no phones, my apologies, in the class environments whatsoever. They need to start confiscating phones at this, you drop it in a drop box, get your little ticket, and at the end of the day, you can collect your phones afterwards. As simple as that. There's some logistical issues as well. I think obviously our children are not being properly supervised. There was a lot of opportunity there for them to be walking around recording, and nowhere did you see a single teacher, security guard, administrator, nobody in sight. I think Dr. Frank may have left, so I can take this headset on, but we'll have him back on the program. Jackie is actually on our website. You can certainly have a look at the article there. And in the article, the video is there also. So I do think that we need to be having some deeper conversations on this, folks. I want us to continue on this platform to use this platform for good. You might not like how we have come to have this conversation, but let me assure you the fact that we're having the conversation is an important moment in all of our lives, and an important moment for us to really try to do right by our children. So again, some breaking information in terms of what's happening at Clifton Hunter this morning. The task force is there with the police undergoing some kind of a search. Most likely they are looking for drugs. And we do have the situation with the fire in the district of Frank Sound. We'll continue to monitor that situation for you, and that story will be going up a bit later on today as well. Like I said, there are a number of high-profile court cases that we're monitoring. The young man who had breached quarantine, Aaron, what's Aaron's last name again? Montemayor, was in court yesterday, folks, and he's now applying for legal aid, and he will be back in court. The judge says she's expecting a plea on May the 24th. So he's going to come back basically in 2 weeks' time from yesterday. And Magistrate Hernandez is the magistrate. She might not be the magistrate that actually ultimately deals with the case, but someone says, well, if it's her, she's probably going to let him off easy anyway. But the law should not be dictating that he gets off easy. If we're going to apply the law and we're going to apply it equally, it was applied to Skylar, And so it is what it is, folks, and very, very unfortunate situation there as well. Children need to learn at a very young age that there are consequences to their actions. Bad consequences when you do the wrong things, and good consequences and rewarded when you do the right thing. Yeah, that's just how it works. So I encourage our young people to start thinking beyond just the moment that you're living in right now. Yes, you're young and you will be able to make certain mistakes, but unfortunately, you're recording those mistakes, which are going to live on forever. And there's no way to undo that. And I really hope that they get that message. I mean, even before we're in this hyper state of social media, I was out there thumping on my private Facebook page for years. Young ladies in particular, don't let men take photos of you. Don't let them record you, because we have seen some epic cases on this very small island where that has been permitted and that has been allowed, and you can never live it down. 10, 15, 20 years later, that person walks into a room and somebody goes, oh yeah, remember when her parts were all over the place because this guy took a photo? Well, back then, he could only email it around. Now it's going to be an Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, every book in the world. So TikTok, I mean, young people, think about your actions. Parents, you need to have these conversations with your young people. And I think because you yourselves might not understand the technology, you don't know how to take a hold of it and explain to them what the dire consequences are. You cannot undo it. Right? If I take down this video, that changes nothing. Every single young person at John Gray, Clifton Hunter, they all have that video. Every minute they're putting up a new Instagram account, they're resharing the video. So it looks like the fire in Frankstown, I've just got another message, is definitely not under control. More fire trucks en route to that situation as well. So we will provide an update by way of a story here on the website shortly. We got some amazing video footage from last night when the fire started, and we now have some video footage and photos from this morning as well that we'll be putting up on the website. Folks, I'm going to run to court. Stay tuned. We will bring you all of the latest and breaking news as and when it happens. Let's put our children first. Yes, it's easy to judge them, but it is a lot harder to just sit down and talk to them. Let's do that, right? They're humans. They're going to screw up. They're going to make mistakes. Let's have the conversation. Abigail says some parents need to stop being on the same level as their children and let them know they're parenting, working your A off, and that the kids need to do their part. If not, they will be on them. Agreed. All right, my good people. Have a wonderful day. Tomorrow, we're going to do a little bit of Caribbean Connection Wednesday. And like I said, we will continue this conversation. So stay tuned for more.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.